John lived a simple life. He worked at the library, organizing dusty tomes. He enjoyed quiet evenings, reading by the fireplace. His life was unremarkable, predictable, until it wasn't.
It began subtly, an unsettling chill in my apartment, even on warm days. Objects moved slightly, as if nudged by an invisible hand. I dismissed it. Stress, I thought. I was working too much.
One night, he woke with a start. A cold sweat clung to him. He felt a presence in the room watching him. The shadows seemed to writhe, taking on menacing forms. He sat up in bed, heart pounding. He searched the room, finding nothing. His rational mind took over.
It was just a nightmare, I told myself.
But a seed of doubt had been planted, growing steadily in the fertile soil of his fear. The strange occurrences continued. Whispers followed him, too quiet to discern. His reflection in the mirror seemed off, eyes filled with a strange knowing. He felt a constant pressure on his mind, an unwelcome intrusion. His sleep offered no respite. Nightmares plagued him, vivid, terrifying dreams of being chased, of being watched by unseen entities.
I would wake up gasping, the feeling of dread lingering long after the dream had faded. I started seeing things in the periphery of my vision, fleeting shadows, gone as soon as I turned my head. A figure standing at the end of the hallway, dissolving into the darkness when I blinked.
The line between reality and nightmare blurred. He couldn't tell if he was awake or trapped in some terrifying dreamscape. Fear became his constant companion, a cold hand gripping his heart. Then came the sleep paralysis. He would wake up, unable to move, unable to speak. A crushing weight pressed down on his chest, stealing his breath.
I would see it then, a shadowy figure perched on my chest, grinning maliciously down at me. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, burning into my soul. I could feel its icy breath on my face, smell the stench of decay and rot.
It whispered to him in the darkness, promises of power intertwined with threats of unimaginable pain.
The terror was all-consuming. He would struggle against the paralysis, desperate to escape the nightmare. Finally, with a gasp, he would break free, drenched in sweat, his heart racing. But the fear remained, etched deep within him.
I tried to tell myself it wasn't real. Sleep paralysis, that's all it was, a trick of the mind.
But deep down, he knew the truth. Something was happening to him, something sinister and inescapable. He tried to reach out, to tell his friends, his family. But the words caught in his throat, sounding hollow and unconvincing even to his own ears.
How could I explain the unexplainable? They wouldn't understand.
He visited doctors, specialists. He underwent countless tests, scans, evaluations. But they found nothing physically wrong with him.
Stress, they concluded. Anxiety, you need to relax.
But John couldn't relax. The entity was always there, lurking in the shadows of his mind, whispering its insidious suggestions. He felt himself changing, becoming someone he no longer recognized. His thoughts were no longer his own, his actions dictated by a force beyond his control. He was trapped, imprisoned in his own body, a prisoner in his own mind. He was alone, utterly and completely alone. No one could help him, no one believed him. The final break came quickly. An outburst at work, a violent episode he couldn't remember. He was restrained, sedated, transported to a place he never thought he'd see. The psych ward was cold, sterile. The air hung heavy with the scent of disinfectant and despair.
I was surrounded by the lost and the broken, their eyes reflecting the emptiness I felt inside.
He was diagnosed with acute psychosis, heavily medicated. The drugs dulled the edges of his fear, but did nothing to banish the presence that haunted him. It was still there, watching him, waiting for him.
I was trapped, not just in the psych ward, but in my own mind, a puppet controlled by a malevolent force.
The entity had won. It had taken root in his soul, twisting him from the inside out. He was no longer John. He was a vessel, an empty shell inhabited by something ancient and evil. John stared out the barred window of his room, his eyes reflecting the cold, indifferent gaze of the demon that now owned him. He was gone. Please like and subscribe. I will be forever grateful.